Welcome to the Sleep and Learn channel. We invite you to listen to interesting scientific facts that will help you fall asleep gently and at the same time learn something new. Relax, close your eyes, and let a calm voice guide you into the world of knowledge and sweet sleep. The calm origins of Greek mythology. Greek mythology is one of the oldest and most fascinating collections of stories ever told. For thousands of years, these myths have helped people imagine the origins of the world, the forces of nature, and the mysterious personalities of the gods who were believed to shape reality. Long before modern science tried to explain the universe, ancient Greeks used stories to describe how the cosmos began and how harmony slowly emerged from chaos. According to ancient tradition, everything began with a vast and quiet emptiness known as chaos. Chaos was not disorder in the modern sense, but rather a boundless space where nothing had yet taken shape. It was calm, silent, and full of potential. From this gentle beginning, the first elements of existence slowly appeared. One of the first beings to emerge was Gaia, the earth itself. Gaia represented stability, life, and the fertile ground from which all living things would eventually grow. Ancient Greeks imagined Gaia as a nurturing presence, a vast living landscape that supported mountains, forests, rivers, and fields. In mythology, she was not simply land but the living foundation of the world. Alongside Gaia came Uranus, the sky. Uranus stretched above the earth like a protective dome, covering Gaia with the stars and the endless blue heavens. In many ancient stories, the relationship between earth and sky symbolized balance, two great forces that together created the environment where life could flourish. From these early cosmic beings came new generations of divine figures. Among them were the Titans, powerful and ancient gods who represented fundamental parts of the universe such as the oceans, time, memory, and light. Unlike later gods who often lived on mountains and interacted with humans, the Titans were seen as vast forces that shaped the structure of the world itself. One of the most peaceful aspects of Greek mythology is how it reflects the rhythms of nature. Many myths describe the gradual formation of landscapes, seasons, and natural patterns. The ancient Greeks believed that rivers had spirits, forests had guardians, and even the wind carried the presence of divine beings. To them, nature was not empty or mechanical, it was alive with quiet intelligence. Because of this worldview, Greek mythology often feels deeply connected to the natural world. Mountains were sacred places where gods might reside. Springs and rivers were believed to be watched over by gentle water spirits called nymphs. Even the changing colors of the sky at sunrise and sunset could be imagined as the work of divine beings guiding the day across the heavens. These myths were passed down for generations through storytelling, poetry, and later written works. One of the earliest poets who recorded many of these stories was Hesiod, whose work Theogony described the family tree of the gods and the birth of the universe. Another important figure was Homer, whose epic poems introduced many mythological characters to the wider Greek world. Yet beyond their grand characters and dramatic adventures, Greek myths also carried a quiet philosophical purpose. They encouraged people to reflect on balance, harmony, and the interconnectedness of all things. The gods were not distant rulers but reflections of natural forces, emotions, and ideas that people could recognize in their own lives. When modern readers explore Greek mythology, they often discover that these stories are not only about powerful gods and legendary heroes. They are also about curiosity, imagination, and humanity's desire to understand the world. In a time when the night sky seemed endless and mysterious, myths offered a comforting way to explore the unknown. In this way, Greek mythology can feel surprisingly calming. It invites us to imagine a universe where mountains, oceans, stars, and seasons all have stories behind them. Instead of seeing nature as silent and empty, the ancient Greeks saw it as a living tapestry filled with meaning. And as we continue exploring these myths, we will discover a rich world of gods, spirits, and timeless legends. Stories that have quietly traveled across thousands of years and still capture the human imagination today. The peaceful world of Mount Olympus. Among the most beloved images in Greek mythology is the idea of a majestic mountain rising high above the clouds, where the gods lived in calm and luminous harmony. This place was known as Mount Olympus, and to the ancient Greeks it represented the highest and most sacred point in the world. Hidden in the mist above northern Greece, Olympus was imagined as a realm where divine beings watched over the rhythms of nature and human life. Unlike ordinary mountains, Olympus in mythology was described as a peaceful and radiant place untouched by storms or harsh weather. The air there was always clear, the sky bright, and the landscape filled with gentle light. Ancient poets imagined the gods living in beautiful halls made of shining materials, where the sound of music and conversation filled the air. At the center of this divine community was Zeus, the king of the gods. Zeus was often associated with the sky, thunder, and the balance of natural order. In many myths, he was seen not only as a powerful ruler, but also as a guardian of harmony and fairness among both gods and humans. From the heights of Olympus, Zeus was believed to observe the world and maintain the natural balance of the universe. Beside him was Hera, often regarded as the queen of the gods. Hera symbolized dignity, protection, and the stability of family life. Ancient Greeks believed she helped guide the bonds between people and preserve the order of relationships within society. Another important figure on Olympus was Athena, the goddess of wisdom and thoughtful strategy. Athena represented calm intelligence and creativity. She was closely connected to learning, craftsmanship, and the thoughtful solutions that allow people to overcome challenges peacefully. In art and stories, she often appears calm and composed, carrying symbols of knowledge such as the owl. The gods of Olympus were not only powerful figures, but also reflections of natural forces and human qualities. Apollo, for example, represented sunlight, music, and harmony. Many myths describe Apollo bringing light to the world each day, guiding the sun across the sky and inspiring artists, poets, and musicians. His presence in mythology often symbolizes clarity and inspiration. Another beloved goddess was Artemis, associated with the quiet beauty of forests and wildlife. Artemis was seen as a protector of animals and the natural world. In ancient stories, she roamed peaceful mountain valleys and moonlit woods, embodying the calm rhythm of nature and the gentle balance between life and wilderness. The Olympian gods were believed to gather together in grand halls to share conversations, feasts, and music. Ancient writers described these gatherings as moments of harmony where the gods discussed the state of the world while enjoying nectar and ambrosia, the mythical food and drink of the divine. For the ancient Greeks, Olympus was not just a location, but also a symbol of cosmic order. It represented a universe where different forces, wisdom, nature, light, creativity, and protection, worked together to maintain balance. Each god had a role, much like elements of nature that together create the world we experience. Stories about Olympus were told not only to explain the universe, but also to inspire reflection. By imagining the gods living together in cooperation and conversation, people could think about the importance of balance in their own lives. Wisdom, creativity, nature, and harmony were all seen as parts of a larger whole. Today, Mount Olympus still stands in northern Greece as a real mountain range, rising dramatically above forests and clouds. While modern science sees it as a geological formation shaped over millions of years, its mythological presence continues to capture the imagination. In many ways, the idea of Olympus invites us to imagine a peaceful place above the everyday world, a realm where wisdom, beauty, and balance guide the universe. And through these timeless myths, the ancient Greeks left us a vision of the cosmos not as a chaotic place, but as a harmonious landscape watched over by thoughtful and powerful guardians. the gentle spirits of nature in Greek mythology. One of the most calming and poetic aspects of Greek mythology is the belief that nature itself was alive with quiet and graceful spirits. To the ancient Greeks, forests, rivers, mountains, and springs were not simply parts of the landscape. They were living places watched over by gentle divine beings who helped maintain the balance and beauty of the natural world. Among the most beloved of these spirits were the nymphs. Nymphs were graceful nature spirits connected to specific parts of the environment. Unlike the powerful Olympian gods who ruled from Mount Olympus, nymphs lived within nature itself, among trees, in flowing streams, beside waterfalls, and within quiet valleys. They were seen as guardians of the places they inhabited, ensuring that the harmony of the natural world remained undisturbed. There were many different kinds of nymphs, each associated with a particular element of nature. Dryads were tree nymphs who lived in forests and ancient groves. It was believed that each dryad was connected to a specific tree, sharing its life and protecting the woodland around it. Because of this belief, many sacred groves were respected and carefully preserved by ancient communities. Another group of nature spirits were the naiads, the nymphs of fresh water. Naiads were believed to inhabit rivers, springs, lakes, and fountains. In mythology, they were often imagined as calm and welcoming beings who brought life to the landscapes around them. Fresh water was incredibly valuable to ancient societies, so springs and rivers were often considered sacred places where these spirits quietly resided. In the mountains lived the Oreads, nymphs associated with rocky cliffs, high peaks, and mountain caves. These spirits represented the wild beauty of the highlands. Ancient travelers sometimes imagined that the whispering wind in the mountains carried the voices of these spirits moving through the valleys and ridges. Greek mythology also described the Oceanids, a vast family of water nymphs connected to the oceans and large bodies of water. They were often imagined as calm guardians of seas and rivers, guiding currents and protecting the natural balance of aquatic environments. The presence of nymphs in Greek mythology reveals something important about how the ancient Greeks viewed the world. To them, nature was not something separate from life. It was part of a living system filled with quiet intelligence and spiritual meaning. A forest was not simply a collection of trees. It was a sacred space watched over by unseen caretakers. This belief encouraged a deep respect for natural places. Springs were often surrounded by small shrines, and forests were treated as sacred landscapes. Even travelers moving through mountains or valleys might offer a quiet moment of appreciation to the spirits believed to inhabit those areas. Beyond nymphs, Greek mythology also spoke of other peaceful nature beings such as satyrs and fauns, who were associated with woodland music and celebration. Though playful and energetic, they symbolized the joy of nature and the lively spirit of forests and meadows. Another figure connected with nature was Pan, a rustic god of wild landscapes, shepherds, and quiet mountain pastures. Pan was often depicted playing a flute made of reeds, filling valleys with soft music carried by the wind. In mythology, this music reflected the gentle rhythm of nature itself, the sound of breezes through grass, water flowing through streams, and animals moving peacefully through the countryside. Together, these stories created a rich vision of a world where nature was never silent or empty. Every river had a spirit, every forest had a guardian, and every mountain had a presence watching over its slopes. This perspective encouraged people to see the natural world not only as a place of resources, but as a place of beauty and balance. Even today, when we walk through a quiet forest or sit beside a flowing stream, it can be easy to understand why these myths were created. The calm atmosphere of nature often feels almost magical, as if the landscape itself holds stories older than human history. Greek mythology reminds us that nature can be seen as a living tapestry, one filled with gentle guardians, flowing rhythms, and timeless harmony. And in these peaceful stories of nymphs and nature spirits, we find one of the most relaxing and poetic aspects of the ancient Greek imagination. the sacred temples and quiet wisdom of ancient Greece. In the ancient Greek world, mythology was not only told in stories and poems, it was also reflected in the peaceful spaces of temples and sacred sanctuaries. These places were built to honor the gods and to create calm environments where people could reflect, pray, and connect with the deeper rhythms of the universe. Surrounded by nature and filled with graceful architecture, these temples became some of the most serene locations in the ancient Mediterranean. Greek temples were often placed in beautiful landscapes. Many stood on gentle hills, near forests, or overlooking the sea. Their white marble columns glowed softly in the sunlight, and the open-air design allowed breezes and natural light to flow through the structures. The architecture itself reflected harmony and balance, values that were deeply respected in Greek culture. One of the most famous sacred places in the ancient world was the sanctuary of Delphi. Nestled on the slopes of Mount Parnassus, Delphi was surrounded by mountains, olive groves, and clear skies. The Greeks believed this peaceful location was a special meeting point between the human world and the divine. At Delphi stood the Temple of Apollo, the god associated with light, music, and wisdom. People from many regions traveled there not only to honor Apollo but also to seek guidance and reflection. The calm environment of the sanctuary encouraged visitors to slow down, listen carefully, and consider thoughtful questions about their lives. Within the temple lived a respected priestess known as the Pythia. She served as the voice of Apollo and shared messages believed to carry divine insight. Visitors approached the temple quietly, often after long journeys, bringing offerings of gratitude and respect. The atmosphere was said to be calm and contemplative, filled with a sense of quiet anticipation. What made places like Delphi especially unique was the way they blended spirituality with nature. The sanctuary was surrounded by towering cliffs and beautiful valleys. The wind moving through the mountains and the distant view of the sea created an environment that felt both majestic and peaceful. Another important sacred site was Olympia, where temples and athletic grounds stood side by side. While Olympia is widely known as the birthplace of the Olympic Games, it was first and foremost a sanctuary dedicated to Zeus. Visitors came not only for athletic competitions but also for ceremonies and gatherings that celebrated harmony, unity, and respect among the Greek city-states. The temples of Greece were also centers of art and craftsmanship. Sculptures of gods and heroes decorated the buildings, and intricate carvings told mythological stories through images. These works were designed not simply to impress but to inspire reflection on beauty, wisdom, and the human connection to the divine. Many temples were surrounded by sacred groves of trees or peaceful courtyards. In these quiet spaces, people could walk, sit, and observe the natural world around them. The sound of wind in the trees, birds singing in the distance, and sunlight reflecting off marble surfaces created an atmosphere of calm contemplation. Even the design of Greek temples followed mathematical proportions meant to represent harmony. Architects carefully calculated the spacing of columns, the angles of rooftops, and the balance of shapes so that the structures would feel visually peaceful and balanced. In many ways, the temples themselves were expressions of the Greek idea that beauty and order exist throughout the universe. These sacred spaces remind us that Greek mythology was not only about dramatic stories of gods and heroes. It was also about creating places where people could pause and reflect on life's deeper questions. Temples, sanctuaries, and sacred landscapes offered moments of stillness in a busy world. Today, the ruins of these temples still stand across Greece. Though time has weathered the marble and softened the carvings, the sense of calm and beauty remains. Visitors who walk among these ancient columns often describe a quiet feeling of connection to the past. Through these temples and sacred places, Greek mythology became more than a collection of stories. It became part of everyday life, woven into architecture, landscapes, and the peaceful spaces where people sought wisdom and inspiration. the gentle wisdom hidden in Greek mythological stories. Greek mythology is often remembered for its powerful gods and legendary heroes, but beneath these grand characters lies something much quieter and deeper. Many Greek myths were designed to share wisdom about life, nature, and human behavior. These stories were not simply entertainment. They were gentle lessons that helped people think about balance, patience, curiosity, and understanding. In ancient Greece, myths were often told around fires, in marketplaces, and during gatherings where people shared stories across generations. Through these stories, listeners were invited to reflect on the choices people make and how wisdom can guide those choices toward harmony and understanding. One of the most interesting aspects of Greek mythology is how many stories revolve around learning. Heroes and travelers in these myths frequently gain knowledge through experience, thoughtful observation, and guidance from the gods. Rather than focusing only on strength or power, these stories often highlight the value of intelligence, creativity, and calm thinking. A beautiful example of this idea appears in the stories surrounding Athena, the goddess of wisdom. Athena represented thoughtful decision-making and the ability to solve problems through insight rather than force. Many myths show her quietly guiding heroes, offering advice, or inspiring clever solutions to difficult challenges. These stories remind us that wisdom can often appear in subtle ways. A moment of reflection, a new idea, or a calm conversation may bring solutions that seem almost magical. Greek mythology celebrates this kind of thoughtful awareness, showing that knowledge and understanding can be powerful forces in shaping the world. Another theme that appears throughout Greek mythology is the importance of curiosity. Many myths begin with a character who wonders about something unknown, whether it is a mysterious landscape, a hidden treasure, or a question about the nature of the universe. This curiosity often leads to journeys of discovery that expand the character's understanding of the world. The ancient Greeks themselves were known for their curiosity. Their myths reflect a culture that loved asking questions about the stars, the oceans, the seasons, and the origins of life. In many ways, these stories encouraged people to observe nature carefully and to appreciate the mysteries that still remained. Greek mythology also contains stories about the power of creativity. Music, poetry, and art were seen as gifts connected to the divine. The Muses, a group of inspiring goddesses, were believed to guide artists, writers, and musicians. Whenever a poet composed a beautiful verse or a sculptor shaped marble into lifelike form, it was said that the Muses had gently inspired the creative spark. Because of this belief, creativity was seen as a meaningful part of life. Storytelling itself became an art form, allowing myths to travel across centuries and cultures. Each retelling added new details while preserving the timeless wisdom inside the stories. Another peaceful message found in Greek myths is the idea of balance. The natural world, day and night, summer and winter, land and sea, moves in cycles that maintain harmony. Many myths symbolically reflect these patterns, reminding listeners that balance is essential both in nature and in human life. For example, the changing seasons were sometimes explained through mythological stories that described nature's quiet rhythm of growth, rest, and renewal. These myths helped people understand that change is a natural and necessary part of life. Even today, these ancient stories still feel meaningful. Modern readers and viewers often find that Greek mythology offers insights about patience, curiosity, and the search for understanding. The myths encourage us to observe the world around us, ask thoughtful questions, and approach challenges with wisdom rather than haste. In this way, Greek mythology becomes more than a collection of ancient legends. It becomes a timeless library of human reflection, a place where stories gently explore the deeper ideas that shape our lives. And perhaps that is why these myths continue to fascinate people thousands of years later. Beneath their dramatic characters and magical landscapes lies something very calming. A quiet reminder that wisdom, creativity, and curiosity are some of the most powerful forces in the human story. The stars, the sky, and the cosmic stories of Greek mythology. For the ancient Greeks, the night sky was more than a field of distant stars. It was a vast cosmic storybook. When people looked upward into the calm darkness above the mountains and seas of Greece, they saw patterns of light that seemed to form shapes, animals, heroes, and divine symbols. These patterns became the constellations, and many of them were explained through the imaginative language of Greek mythology. Without telescopes or modern astronomy, ancient observers relied on careful watching and storytelling to understand the heavens. Over many generations, they noticed that certain groups of stars always appeared together and moved slowly across the sky in predictable ways. To help remember these patterns, they connected the stars with myths that turned the sky into a living map filled with legendary figures. One of the most famous constellations in Greek mythology is Orion, the Great Hunter. In the night sky, Orion appears as a group of bright stars forming a recognizable shape. Ancient storytellers imagined Orion walking across the heavens with his hunting companions, forever visible in the winter sky. His constellation became one of the easiest for people to recognize, guiding travelers and sailors during the night. Nearby in the sky lies the constellation Ursa Major, often called the Great Bear. This group of stars forms what many people today recognize as the Big Dipper. In Greek mythology, the constellation was connected to stories about transformation and protection, and it became one of the most important star patterns used for navigation. The Greeks also told stories about Cassiopeia, a constellation shaped like a shining letter W in the northern sky. Cassiopeia's stars are easy to see on clear nights, and ancient observers used them to locate nearby constellations. Her position in the sky slowly rotates through the seasons, creating the illusion of a celestial throne turning gently above the earth. Another important constellation in Greek mythology is Pegasus, the winged horse. Pegasus appears as a large square pattern of stars that forms the body of the mythical creature. In ancient stories, Pegasus symbolized inspiration and imagination, rising into the sky as a symbol of creativity and divine connection. Greek myths also helped explain the soft glowing band that stretches across the night sky, the Milky Way. Ancient Greeks imagined this pale river of light as something magical, a celestial pathway across the heavens. Even today, when viewed far from city lights, the Milky Way appears like a luminous cloud of stars quietly flowing across the sky. The connection between mythology and the stars helped ancient people navigate the world around them. Sailors traveling across the Mediterranean Sea used constellations to guide their journeys at night. Farmers also watched the appearance of certain stars to understand the changing seasons and the best times for planting and harvesting crops. Because of this, the night sky was both practical and poetic. It helped people travel safely, but it also inspired curiosity and imagination. Every clear night offered a reminder that the universe was vast, mysterious, and full of stories waiting to be discovered. Greek mythology turned the sky into something personal and meaningful. Instead of distant points of light, the stars became characters in an endless cosmic story. Heroes walked across the heavens, animals formed shapes in the darkness, and divine symbols appeared slowly as the earth turned beneath the stars. Even today, many of the constellation names used in modern astronomy still come from Greek mythology. Orion, Pegasus, Cassiopeia, and many others remain part of the scientific language used by astronomers around the world. When we look up at the night sky today, we are seeing the same stars that inspired ancient storytellers thousands of years ago. The constellations still appear in the same patterns, moving slowly through the seasons just as they did in the ancient world. In this way, Greek mythology reminds us that the universe can be viewed not only through science, but also through imagination. The stars above us become more than distant suns. They become symbols, stories, and quiet reminders of humanity's timeless curiosity about the cosmos. The peaceful creatures and symbols of Greek mythology. Greek mythology is not only filled with powerful gods and wise heroes. It also contains a rich world of symbolic creatures, animals and mythical beings that represented beauty, imagination, and the mysteries of nature. These creatures were not always meant to frighten or challenge people. Many of them symbolized harmony, inspiration, and the deep connection between humans and the natural world. One of the most famous creatures in Greek mythology is Pegasus, the legendary winged horse. Pegasus was imagined as a magnificent white horse with powerful wings that allowed him to fly across the sky. In ancient stories, Pegasus became a symbol of freedom, inspiration, and creativity. Poets and artists often believed that Pegasus represented the moment when imagination suddenly takes flight. According to mythological tradition, Pegasus was closely connected with the Muses, the divine figures who inspired poetry, music, and art. It was said that wherever Pegasus touched the ground, springs of clear water would appear. One such spring, known as Hippocrene, was believed to bring creative inspiration to poets who drank from it. Another beautiful creature found in Greek mythology is the phoenix, a magnificent bird associated with renewal and the endless cycle of life. The phoenix was often described as glowing with golden and crimson feathers, shining like the sunrise. In mythological stories, this rare bird symbolized transformation, hope, and the idea that new beginnings always follow the passage of time. Greek mythology also describes the hippocampus, a fascinating sea creature with the front half of a horse and the tail of a fish. Hippocampi were believed to live in the oceans and serve as companions to sea gods. Ancient artists often depicted them pulling chariots through the waves, moving gracefully through the water like living currents of the sea. Another beloved figure in Greek myth is the centaur. These beings were imagined as half human and half horse, living in the peaceful forests and mountains of Greece. While some myths describe them as lively and energetic, many stories portray certain centaurs as wise teachers and guides. One well-known centaur, Chiron, became famous in mythology for his knowledge of medicine, philosophy, and the arts. Greek mythology also includes many gentle animal companions associated with the gods. Owls, for example, were sacred to Athena and symbolized wisdom and observation. Because owls can see clearly in darkness, they became a natural symbol of insight and thoughtful awareness. Similarly, dolphins were often connected with the sea gods and were admired for their intelligence and grace. Ancient Greek sailors frequently saw dolphins swimming beside their ships, and they became symbols of guidance and safe journeys across the ocean. Even simple animals sometimes held mythological meaning. Swans, with their elegant movements and bright feathers, were often linked to Apollo and the beauty of music. Their graceful presence reflected harmony and artistic inspiration. These creatures were not merely decorations in mythological stories. They represented ideas that were important to the ancient Greek imagination: freedom, creativity, wisdom, and the beauty of nature. Through these symbolic animals, myths communicated deeper meanings about the world. Greek artists loved depicting these creatures in sculptures, paintings, and pottery. Across ancient Greece, images of winged horses, dolphins, and wise owls appeared on temples, vases, and coins. These artistic symbols reminded people of the myths that shaped their culture and imagination. Today, many of these creatures remain familiar symbols even outside the context of mythology. Pegasus still represents creativity, the phoenix symbolizes renewal, and the owl remains a universal symbol of wisdom. In this way, Greek mythology created a vibrant world where animals, nature, and imagination blended together. These creatures brought stories to life and filled the mythological landscape with wonder and symbolism. When we read these myths today, these creatures remind us of something simple yet powerful: that imagination can transform the natural world into a place filled with meaning, beauty, and endless inspiration.